Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 745, Monday, April the 8th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so yesterday I mentioned at the end of the video that I was going to focus today on some Trump tweets and where I think that we're going to go from this point forward. And so there's just a couple of news items I'm going to hit and then we're going to move right into that. Okay, so before I do that, just remember today is the video. This video, the comments section in this video is where you need to put in your vote for Dumbass of the Week. It's going to be quite a competition this week. Got some very good candidates, some of the same old characters, but we have a few new people that could potentially jump in there and possibly claim victory for Dumbass of the Week. Right now, there's some really good candidates, of course, the Wild-Eyed Commie, Cortez, faking the Southern accent. We have Jill Biden coming out and saying that Joe creeped her out too. We've got a lot of these, but I have to say at this point, my vote so far, anything could happen in the next 24 hours, but I'm kind of leaning right now towards the Dumbass of the Week as Christine Armapour for that comment she made when she was interviewing Comey, and she was asking him why or what his thoughts were about possibly shutting down the "lock her up" chant. That's right. She's asking Comey about what his thoughts are on shutting people down and shutting down the "lock her up" chant. Now you would think as a journalist she would be pretty defensive of the First Amendment, but apparently not. And I have to say it's one of the most extraordinary things I've ever heard come out of the mouth of a so-called journalist, Christine Armapour, CNN, of course. And of course, Comey couldn't handle that one. He had to tell her, well, in this country we do have the First Amendment, so even though it's not nice, they have the right to say it. So even Comey had to kind of set her straight there. But yeah, she's right now at the top of my list. But there's some other good candidates, so certainly get your vote in for Dumbass of the Week on this video, and of course on Tuesday, on Monday, we'll announce the winner of Dumbass of the Week on tomorrow's video. After I read the comment section of today's video to see who you all nominated. Thanks so much for participating in Dumbass of the Week. Okay, let's cover a couple things and we'll get right into the main topic of the day. Okay, so this morning, or I should say Sunday morning, many of you saw, I'm sure, Devin Nunes on Maria Bartiromo, where Nunes has basically laid out what he's going to be doing this week. He's going to be forwarding those criminal referrals to Attorney General Barr. He said that they also may be having a meeting with Barr regarding these criminal referrals. And so he told Maria Bartiromo that there's going to be 8 criminal referrals. Now, 5 of these criminal referrals are on specific individuals, and I think we know who those individuals are, most of them. He did not name them, didn't want to name them, but I think we know that there's certainly going to be Comey is in that list. McCabe's already got a criminal referral, so I don't know if he's on the list, if they're going to second that. I think Strzok and Page certainly have to be on that list, and I would have to think that Brennan and Clapper have to be on that list maybe. But either way, it's going to be 5 individuals. He said there could be more, but it will be those 5 individuals for now. And then the other 3 criminal referrals are going to cover groups of people, which could entangle a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen people. How many, I don't know. But the other 3 referrals are going to be referrals on specific things that happened, such as the FISA abuses and lying to the FISA court, the leaking of classified information. Lots and lots of that went on, and especially on who leaked the Kislyak phone call. And we learned last week that they very well may have had a FISA on Flynn, which would be very, very bad if that's proven. Because up till now, they've led us to believe that they were actually surveilling Kislyak, and that's how they got Flynn. But now there's suggestions, we learned last week, that they may have actually had a FISA on Flynn. If that's the case, people are definitely going to jail for that. And also he's going to have a criminal referral on the people who perjured themselves in front of Congress in their testimonies, both public and private. So it looks like Barr is going to have a pretty heavy workload. In addition to that, you've got Meadows and Jordan with their own issues that they're sending over to Mueller. And of course, we should be seeing the Lindsey Graham hearings beginning here shortly, and of course he will be following up with more criminal referrals as well. So it looks like the ball is going to start rolling now that the Mueller probe is over, and this whole thing is about to be turned 180 degrees completely on its head. Now, I've been talking the last, since the first week I started doing TowerGate videos about why I thought that the rotten Reverend Clinton was the person who was behind this entire plot. And we've seen several stories now just in the past 2 weeks that are starting to catch on to that. And again, yesterday, Sunday, the Gateway Pundit ran a story, and the headline was, "Confirmed. Hillary was in on it. Hillary campaign manager was pushing fake Russia story at DNC convention same day as the FBI launched the Trump-Russia investigation." So here you can see more and more people now finally starting to figure out that this was a rotten Reverend Clinton operation from the very get-go. She was planning, she planned, directed, controlled this entire plot. They were all working for Hillary. So you'll see more and more of this as they dig deeper and deeper into this thing, and they find that everything leads back to the rotten Reverend Clinton. I determined this in the first week that I was doing TowerGate videos, now over 2 years ago. I'm glad they're finally catching up. Better late than never. And then, of course, if you're looking for candidates for Dumbass of the Week, here's another very good candidate for you. Here we have Dan, I'd rather not, Dan Rather, jumping on Trump's animal comment, which we know happened a long time ago and has already been debunked. He was talking about MS-13. But we have Dan, I'd rather not, jump on this animal comment. He is forgetting, of course, that he described Trump as a caged animal showing his fangs. He sent out this tweet on December the 12th, 2017. So here's Dan Rather saying how no one should ever compare a human to an animal and call people animals, and this is horrible, and isn't Trump so bad for doing all these things? And he forgets that he, in fact, himself compared Trump to a caged animal showing his fangs. Just exactly what you'd expect from Dan, I'd rather not. So there you go, Dan Rather, who was fired, of course, from his job for lying and pushing a fake story on George W. Bush. Fake news. He was the original fake news anchor. He'd be best to shut up and go away. Now, that's basically all I want to spend on the news. There wasn't really much news that broke yesterday, so I just wanted to cover those things. And now I want to get into the main topic of today's video, which is kind of a discussion video more than anything else. So, we started this thing off. I started doing my TowerGate videos on March 6th of 2017 after Trump tweeted out that he learned that Obama had been tapping his wires. That's what motivated me to start doing the TowerGate videos, because I believed that if Trump was telling the truth, that he obviously knew something, that this was going to be bigger than Watergate, and that I wanted to follow this story to wherever it leads. And of course, we're still on it 2 years later. And it's been a lot of ups and downs over the past 2 years, and a lot of difficult days, a lot of dark clouds. We've weathered a lot of storms here. A lot of times where things were looking pretty dark. But as I've always stated throughout the times I've been doing this video, is that I believed that we would eventually get to the truth. Because things like this, that are this big, are really hard to keep quiet, and that eventually the truth would come out. And I said that as far as people being held accountable, that's a 50-50 shot. Maybe. I know the truth will come out. Whether or not that results in people being held accountable, I wasn't so sure. But now, the way I feel is that we are going to see some fairly high-level people and probably some mid-level people actually being held accountable for these crimes. And I believe that just because of what I see happening now. So I kind of see this whole saga as now being really a two-parter, kind of like a football game where you have a first half and a second half. And the first half was all about them trying to take down Trump. But their best shot, of course, was the insurance policy. That was Uncle Bob. His primary objective being to protect the evidence that would incriminate the real crime and the real criminals. But now he's gone away. And as I've been saying for a very long time, when people say, how's this going to happen? I just don't see how it's going to happen. And I've always said that it'll happen when two things occur, which is that, number one, Trump gets personally involved. And I think he has been personally involved. I think he'll get more personally involved now that the Mueller probe is over. You see, he couldn't declassify a lot of these things or say or do a lot of things because he was told if he did, he would be considered obstructing the Mueller investigation. So he was kind of put in check. But now that's over. So Trump is free to pursue the criminals and the crimes without fear of blowback from the Mueller investigation. And I've also said that it would take mass public support, public demand for getting the truth out and holding people accountable for their crimes. So the two things being Trump getting involved and the American people demanding that there be people held accountable for what they did. And that would, of course, require the majority of people, or certainly a large enough number of people in the country, finding out the truth, which has been held back from them because a lot of it is in the witnesses and documents that we've not been able to have access to because of the Mueller investigation. So now that the Mueller investigation is behind us, I kind of see this as like the first half of a football game, and the first half has ended. And now it's the second half, and everything's different. So the Mueller probe is ended, and as we have seen over the past couple of weeks, people are coming out and talking now. They were afraid before because they were afraid of being SWAT raided or drug into the fray by Uncle Bob, so that it forced a lot of people to stay silent. A lot of other people were under gag orders from the Mueller investigation. They weren't allowed to talk. But now that's over. So we have Papa Galopoulos releasing his book, which I've watched a lot of his interviews. I've looked at the reviews on his book. I plan on getting a copy myself. And he really lays out a very good blueprint for what exactly did happen. We now see that Nunes is making his criminal referrals. Jordan and Meadows, working with Gomer and some other people, are getting ready to do a very similar thing. Lindsey Graham is now going to fire up his hearings in the Senate. We just had this woman, this Lakova woman, who over in the UK, she's come out and gone public and said, hey, Flynn was framed and I was caught up in that and we need to get this investigated. So people are now beginning to come out of the woodwork, and these things are now happening. So, of course, three of the critical players here that can unravel this whole plot and who are key and central to unraveling the plot were the actual guys who are running the setup at the ground level. Of course, we know about Brennan and Breedlove and Hannigan and Comey and Strzok and all these people being at the top orchestrating all this, but it's really the operators that were on the ground at ground level actually carrying out these orders are the people we really need to hear from, because they have a lot of information that needs to come out to prove exactly what was going on. In fact, to prove what I've been saying for a very long time, which is there were no Russians. There were no Russians. I'm not talking about, Russian bots or Russian guys working on a troll farm that will never know who they are. Their names will never come here to face trial. I'm talking about Russians. We were told that there were Russians, like Russians connected to Putin and Putin's administration, people in the Russian military or intelligence services giving this information, and that's where Steele got it. I've been saying for a very long time that this is all completely false. We're going to find out that it's false. There were no damn Russians. What they were is Western intelligence operatives. Halper, Mifsud, and Downer. And those are three people we definitely need to hear from that can unravel the whole thing. And I believe that we will. Now let me explain why I believe that we will. And I'll do that by giving you a very good example. So, as a good example of why I think we will eventually get to these people, and the hardest one to get to will be Halper, but we'll eventually get to him too, because he's very key. But as far as the guys from foreign governments, and in a way, Halper kind of was working with British intelligence, so I think he might come out on that end as well. But let's just focus on Misfit and Downer, our two guys that are going to have to be exposed because they played critical roles in the effort to launch the investigation. The FBI said that their official reason for launching the investigation on July 31st of 2016 was the conversation between Papadopoulos and Downer. So that is a key event that happened. We have Papadopoulos' book out there where he lays it all out and tells you exactly who these people were that he came in contact with. They were not Russians. They were Western intelligence people. So these people are now being hidden. The Italian government is keeping Misfit in hiding. The Australian government is keeping Downer under wraps. And of course, Halper has been very, very quiet, and he's obviously been kept under wraps as well. But they're all going to be brought forward. There'll be no choice because they played too critical of a role, and only they can tell us what they knew. So eventually, it's going to get to them, believe me. And let me give you an example why. Okay, so looking at Ukraine, during the 2016 election, the president, Poroshenko, was a hardcore Hillary Clinton supporter. He was openly bashing Trump, saying a lot of very bad things about Trump, endorsing Hillary right along with the rest of his friends at the EU because they all believed that the rotten Reverend Clinton was going to win, and they hated Trump. So what happens next? Trump wins the election. Now keep in mind, Ukraine is very dependent on the U.S. Because they, especially Poroshenko, because he is in complete opposition to Putin and his government and other forces. And so Ukraine is a horribly corrupt and not very stable country, pretty much divided between East and West. There's always the fear of some sort of a revolution or counter-revolution or the government being overthrown or something. So it's a very dicey situation over there. And so they rely a lot on the U.S. And of course, they're relying both on political and military support from the U.S. to try to keep from having the Russian influence take over their country. So what happens is Trump wins the election. And that's a big problem for Poroshenko because he spent the entire time trying to destroy Trump, right along with many other people, and supporting Hillary. So right after the election's over, the Ukrainian government reaches out to the Trump administration to try to, reaches out with the fig leaf there, trying to soften things up and trying to establish a good relationship. But for more than a year, Trump administration would have nothing to do with Ukraine, gave him the cold shoulder, because obviously Trump knew the role that they played, and he understood exactly what Poroshenko had said about him during 2016, and so Trump had no interest whatsoever in buddying up with Poroshenko. So that created a huge problem with Poroshenko, and he realized that he was going to have to do something to try to fix that relationship with Trump. So what happens? After about a year, Poroshenko shows up. He gets a visit to the White House, and he gets the full, treatment. The roll out the red carpet. He gets to come to the Oval Office. The media comes in. They take pictures. He has his conversation with Trump or whatever, and then Trump says that yes, we're going to provide the political and military support that President Poroshenko has requested. So obviously, Poroshenko came on his hands and knees, apologized to Trump, and told Trump he would do whatever he had to do to make good on to fix things, and but that he desperately needed Trump's support politically and militarily. And Trump, I'm sure, told him, well, you got a lot of problems because I know what you did, and I know what was going on in Ukraine. I know that a lot of this crap Trump-Russia started and originated there, and you got a lot of corrupt people in your administration, including you, who peddled this stuff. So, you got to show me what you're going to do for me. So, obviously, a deal was cut for Poroshenko to get Trump's, to be accepted for a White House visit and to get the political and military support he wanted. So what happens just almost right after Poroshenko's meeting here? We find out about what's going on in Ukraine. We find out that the number 2 man at the NRBU, or NABU, I think it's called, which is like the Ukrainian version of the FBI, the number 2 man has been convicted of meddling in the 2016 elections and trying to help Hillary Clinton and hurt Donald Trump. Not only that, they have a major investigation going on with the top prosecutor in Ukraine, who's like our Attorney General, and he has got a tape which has the number 1 man at the Ukrainian version of the FBI on tape talking about helping Hillary Clinton and taking down Trump and cooperating, providing documents and information, mostly about Paul Manafort's financial dealings in Russia and the UK and various other places, or Ukraine and various other places. So what we see here is that Poroshenko obviously was forced to go after these top officials in his law enforcement and intelligence community to come clean and make it public to the world that, in fact, Ukraine, there were corrupt public officials who were engaged in helping Hillary, trying to hurt Trump, working with the American FBI, working with the Hillary Clinton campaign, the DNC, members of parliament in the Ukraine were working with members of Congress to peddle this nonsense. So essentially, the whole thing is being blown up in Ukraine, and it will likely have a major impact on the outing of the entire story, because essentially the Trump-Russia thing began with these people in Ukraine and the Hillary Clinton campaign. That's where it really began. And so here we can see how Trump has played his hand with Ukraine. He's essentially leveraged his position by saying, look, if you want us to treat you right, you want us to help you politically, militarily, you've got to come out and come clean. When you come clean, I'll see what we can do. So we can now see that this is all going on. The investigations are going on in Ukraine. They're exposing how they tried to take out Trump and help Hillary. Many people will be going to jail, including the number one person at the Ukrainian FBI. The number two person's already been convicted. The number three person is in hot water. There are other public officials that are being investigated. So it's a fairly big investigation going on there in the Ukraine. And that's what Poroshenko had to do to get on the good graces of Trump. Now, Poroshenko was involved in this up to his eyeballs. But it is a horribly corrupt country, and as in most cases, generally the top guy finds people to fall on the sword for him, and other people are scapegoated so that he survives. And that's exactly what we see in Ukraine, and I think it's exactly what we're going to see in Italy, which is why I think the Italians will eventually give up Misfit, because they'll be looking at the same situation. They want to be in the good graces of the United States. They're going to have to come clean about what Italian intelligence was doing, and they're going to have to stop protecting Misfit, and they're going to have to serve him up, and that they will. The same is true for the UK. It's going to be embarrassing for the UK and for the Australians. But the UK and the Australians, Trump's going to play the same game. And you can see, you don't see Trump showing a lot of love for the Australians or the UK. He was going to declassify those documents, which would have outed them back in the summer of last year, late summer of last year. But he was stopped because he was told that would be obstruction. He could be charged with obstruction by the Mueller team. But now that's over, so he can do that. And he told Sean Hannity just a week ago he was going to do that. But I think it's already come out. Everyone already knows that the UK and Australia were involved, just like Ukraine and Estonia and some others. So eventually the pressure cooker is going to get to all these people. It's going to be exposed, and at some point the UK and Australia are going to realize that this stuff is all coming out, and they're going to have to find a way to get out ahead of it. And they're also going to want to be in our good graces, and they're going to realize that Trump's almost certainly going to be reelected. And once they realize that they've got 6 more years of this guy, and they're going to have to deal with it, they're going to realize that they're going to have to serve up some heads. They're going to have to come clean and talk about it, what they did, the rogue elements of those two governments, what they did in participating in the coup. So they're going to be forced to do exactly what happened in Ukraine, just like the Italians. They're all going to have to come clean and serve up their dupe. And in this case, it's going to be Downer and Halper and, of course, Misfit. And there may be more. We also had Mr. Greenberg, but I believe Mr. Greenberg was straight from the FBI. So this is what I believe I expect is going to happen as we move forward now. I do believe it'll take some time for this to unravel, probably another year to 2 years before this is totally unraveled, probably another year to 2 before we start seeing the actual indictments. But over the next year, I believe that we're going to see the other side of the story being told. I have a reasonable amount of good feelings about Barr, just because of the way he ended the the Mueller probe. Obviously put a stop to that pretty quickly, and he seems to be pretty receptive. Members of Congress who've met with him are saying positive things. People who know him personally, like the DeGeneves, know him personally, said, "Oh no, this dude's gonna take care of it." So I'm feeling pretty good about where we are and why these things are going to come out. But if you really want to be 100% sure that we are going to get to the bottom of this and the perps are going to be held accountable, you only need to listen to the man himself and read his tweets. Here are Trump's tweets from last Saturday. Tweet number 1. In fact, this is actually 2 tweets that were together that were kind of long, and then the third tweet. So I'm going to read these tweets just right in order. So here was Trump's tweets from Saturday. Why should I be defending a fraudulent Russian witch hunt? It's about time the perpetrators of this fraud on me and the American people start defending their dishonest and treasonous acts. Their dishonest and treasonous acts. How and why did this terrible event begin? Never forget. Okay, so you can't put it any more bluntly than that. He's telling you that he's tired of being on defense. And that's over for him. And now it's time for the other folks to be on defense. And he's telling you right here. And he's really getting to the nut of the issue where he says, how did this all begin? Where did this terrible event begin? That's critical because Trump knows that it began from the intelligence. It worked its way. It began with Hillary Clinton and the intel community, and it was pipelined into the FBI where it could actually turn into investigations. And Trump knows this. And he also knows that in the very beginning, when it was the intel agencies and the Clinton campaign, that it was all that all this was being orchestrated. He knows that it involved very early on in creating the false Trump-Russia narrative. It involved the governments of the UK, Ukraine, Australia, and Italy, and to some degree Estonia. So this is what he's saying. Go back to the beginning, figure out where all this started, who started it, who put all this, who set all this into motion. That's what he's saying, and that's why I know that it has to go into the things that were happening outside the country and these other governments. And Trump is telling you right here that that's exactly what he wants, and that's why it is going to come out. That's why we are eventually going to get Misfit, Halper, and Downer served up, because these governments have no choice. They're going to have to serve these guys up and come clean. Otherwise, they're going to be on the cold shoulder side of the president for the next probably 6 years, which is something they really can't afford. So let's get to the next tweet. He says, so let's get this straight. There was no collusion, and in fact, the phony dossier was a con job that was paid for by Crooked Hillary and the DNC. So the 13 angry Democrats were investigating an event that never happened, and that in fact was made up fraud. I just fought back against something I knew never existed. Collusion with Russia? So ridiculous. No obstruction. This Russia hoax must never happen to another president, and law enforcement must find out. How did it start? That's speaking to Barr. He's talking to Barr. And Barr, by now, knows enough. He follows this just as closely as all of us. He knows where this began. He knows it began with the intel community. He knows it began with the foreign spies. He knows it began with foreign governments. So, this is what we have from Trump on Saturday, these tweets. So, as I said, Trump would have to get personally involved. He just told Sean Hannity last week he would see declassifying the 28 pages and the Gang of Eight stuff. And we know from Papadopoulos, who's out there on the speaking tour right now, he's basically saying that those 28 pages detail his contacts with these so-called Russians, which turned out to be Western intelligence assets working for the intelligence community, the UK, Australia, and the US. And this is where a lot of that began, in concert with the rotten Reverend Clinton. So this is where I think we're going to be heading now. Again, these things take time. We've spent 2 years on the other side of the field on defense, but this particular part of the game, the second half, we're going to be on offense. It's going to be the perps, who will be on defense, trying to fight this off. But in our case, we had the truth on our side. That's why Trump is still standing and I'm still doing these videos and you're still watching. But on this second half of the game, we have got the ball, we're on offense, and we got the truth on our side. And that's what's going to come out. And the people on the other side who are really responsible, and this includes a large amount of people. This is why this conspiracy is so massive, because it didn't just involve, a couple crooked cops. This was the entire hierarchy of the FBI, counterintelligence, the Department of Justice, National Security Division, multiple intelligence agencies, not just U.S. intelligence, but British intelligence, Ukrainian intelligence, the Ukrainian government, Australian intelligence, private intelligence firms, and most importantly, the media. The media. And that's another group that people are forgetting about. They were complicit in this. CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, Daily Beast, Yahoo News. These people knew what they were doing. They knew they were pushing leaked garbage that they knew was garbage. They knew what they were pushing, and they knew why they were pushing it. I don't know if there's criminal liability here for the media, but I know that their credibility is going to be destroyed. Entire networks are going to be destroyed. Entire careers of some of these so-called fake news reporters, they are going to be destroyed. Particularly people like Rachel Madcow and others, whose entire careers almost have been writing on this story for the past 2.5 years. They're going to be destroyed. Because again, they weren't just accomplices in terms of they were used. No, they weren't being used. They were participants. They were working alongside in coordination. They were co-conspirators in this plot to carry out a coup. Not exactly where you want to be as an American media organization, being known as participating with the deep state to carry out a coup on a president. It's not exactly where you want to be as a media organization. So I do see over the next 2 years that this is going to be unraveled. I do believe better than 50-50 that people are going to be held accountable at the highest levels, and I think it's going to go at least all the way up to probably Brennan and Clapper. You may even get Loretta Lynch, Sally Yates. I don't maybe Susan Rice, because she was responsible for the unmaskings, but it will probably stop short of Obama, simply because we generally do not take down previous presidents. But his legacy will certainly be destroyed. His reputation will be tarnished forever. History will know him as the president who tried to take out his successor, the opposition candidate. His name will be Mud, but I don't think he'll ever be indicted. There will be many people who will fall on the sword for him and cover for him so that he can plead ignorance and walk away. But everyone will know he was guilty. Just like OJ. He got off, but everyone knew he was guilty, and how was he treated? Like a pariah. Obama will find himself walking into restaurants and being told, "I'm sorry, we can't serve you. Leave." That's what happens to OJ when he comes to town and goes to those restaurants he used to go to here and be treated like a celebrity. Now when he walks in, they throw his ass out. The same will happen to Obama. His name is Mud. This entire thing is going to shake itself out, my friends, and we were on the right side of history. Thank you so much for sticking with me over the past 2 years as I've tried to cover the story the best way that I could. I'm not a professional reporter. I don't do this for a living or anything like that. It's just a story that I was very interested in, and I thought was an important story that someone needed to follow and tell the truth about, because I knew it wasn't happening in the mainstream news, and I knew there was a lot more going on here than what we were being told. So thanks for all of you for sticking with me. And now as we move forward from this point forward, believe me, we're going to be in a completely different frame of mind as we go forward and get the truth and expose the crimes hold the perps accountable, and then celebrate on that tarmac down in North Carolina. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. Bye.